shame will break as broken hearts declare his praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. So open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. Whoa, the God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? And our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. And our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? For who can stop the Lord Almighty? 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 Oh, who can stop the Lord? Yeah. Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb.
Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing today? Glad to have you all back here to Creekside Chronicles. And it's been a long week with maple syrup and milling and rain and snow and everything. But we're glad you're here with us today. Good to have Jesse and Lisa here, always helping us out so much, getting these things organized and making everything work so well. Mike Mart from Indiana. So glad he's here with us. Dave and Sandy from Oregon. Happy anniversary. They had an anniversary this week. So happy anniversary, Dave and Sandy. And everyone else, Lynette from Coffee Angels. How are you doing, Lynette? And glad you're stopping in this morning with us. And I don't think I've missed anybody. I know Maura will be joining us here in just a few minutes. But hope everyone had a good weekend thus far, and hope everything is going well for everybody. We're going to um, delve into a new series starting this week, and we may not do it every week, but I want to start anyway, and just called Living Life series, is what we're going to call it, and deal with some things from the scriptures, that everyday stuff that folks have to deal with. So, Jenny, how are you? Glad you're here today. So glad to have everyone stopping in for sure. We got a nice fire in the background, and a little chilly here today. We've had some rain and snow yesterday, and some rain and more snow supposed to be today and Monday and Tuesday. So really slows down everything. But the sap was running for maple syrup season, but it's not running that much right now. It's just not the weather for it. But hopefully we'll get another good push of sap before it ends. But the buds are starting to come out on trees, and when buds start coming out on trees, that's normally about the end of the sap season. We shall see. But we have been boiling, and we'll see how much syrup we get out of it for sure. But we want to, I'll throw this up here today. This is what we're going to be talking about here, Live Life series. And seems to be a lot of stuff that's going on in the world today with, obviously the Ukrainian situation. But here on, even on the home front, we have the cost of living skyrocketing, fuel going through the roof, pandemics, and all kinds of negative stuff, all kinds of things that cause us to stop for a moment and look around and kind of assess our lives and what's happening. A lot of people have a lot of anxiety over all of these things that have been going on, and there's fear and all those things. But the Lord told us that He has given us not a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. So hopefully with some of these lessons, we can encourage you today. And we're going to familiar portion of scripture today in this. It's from Luke 8:43 and 44. And today's topic is live like you're dying. We're going to talk about the woman with the 12-year-old blood disease. And we're going to see what we can learn from that today. Hey, Tim, how are you? From Arkansas. Glad to have him with us. We need to pray for all those folks in Arkansas. There was over the weekend at a some kind of get together. There was a shooting there, and like 20 some people have been injured, one fatality, many people in the hospital. So that was in Arkansas. So let's continue to keep everyone in our prayers that's in that situation. There's so many things to pray about, isn't there? Always lots of stuff to pray about, things going on in the world, things that are happening. It's crazy. It really, truly is. But it's also an exciting time because, the Bible tells us when there's war and rumors of war, when there's pandemics and all of these things going on, it says to look up, for our redemption draweth nigh. And so I don't know about you, but I believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ, and that there will be a rapture, and that there is a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. And I want to make sure I make it to heaven. And I would hope that you do as well. That's why you're here. But anyway, we're going to, I know the hour, the change of time has really affected us. And I've had numerous people share that with us through emails and messages, that it just threw them off because they're getting up so early anyhow to join us. And we realize that it's still, the same amount of hours in a day. But I know there's just something different about when you're used to getting up and it's daylight versus now getting up and it's dark and all of those sort of things. But I'll tell you what, we appreciate everyone that is here, everyone that does show up and makes the sacrifice. I know in Oregon, Dave and Sandy, I know it's 4 hours difference there. in Texas. I'm not sure, but I think there's 2 or 3 hours difference to Texas. In Indiana, it's very early for most of the folks that come in here, and what can I say? It is what it is. But we may look at going to 11 o'clock if that works better. I'm not sure. Through the summer months, it may work better, but right now we'll just stick to this and see what happens. But if we find that we lost half of our viewing audience when the time changed, so we'll have to see what takes place. But anyhow, let's go to Luke chapter 8 and verse 43. Now you have to realize there's what's called the synopsis of the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And hey, Kareen, how are you? So glad Davis Family Live is here. There's this, as I was saying, the synopsis of the Gospels means that you can look in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and generally find a lot of the same stories written just from a different perspective. And this story here is one of those that can be found in Matthew. I think it's Matthew 9 that this story can be found in. It's in Mark. And Luke, obviously, 8 and 43 is the one that we are reading today. And so it says this. I hope you can read that. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. A woman who had a blood disease for 12 years had spent everything she had on doctors, physicians, yet she remained sick. She came behind Jesus, and you know the story. He was walking through a crowd in the center of town, and she came behind Jesus and touched the hem of his garment and was healed instantly. Now that's the New International reading of those scriptures, but it still holds true to whether it's King James or not. There was a woman that had blood disease for 12 years, and she tried everything she could try to find healing, everything, and she could not. If you look at that story, you see that she spent everything that she had on physicians, couldn't find any healing, couldn't find any process that would make her better. And then she hears about Jesus, and she realizes that she's got nothing to lose, and she comes through town, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, and touches the hem of his garment. And so it's something to be said for her just ability to get up and start and go again. If you remember, not too long ago, a few years back, there was a song that came out. I believe Tim McGraw was the one that sang it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was. And it says, the title of the song was "To Live Like You're Dying." And it talks about how he was in his early 40s with a lot of life before him. And then he said, obviously, the person he's singing about got a bad doctor's report that changed his perspective on life. And so the singer asks basically the hypothetical question, what did it do to you? What happened next? What changed? And he said, I changed my whole perspective on life. He said, I went skydiving. I went Rocky Mountain climbing. He rode a bull. He said, I loved deeper. He said, I spoke sweeter. He said, I gave forgiveness that I'd been denying. And then he said, someday I hope you get the chance to live like you're dying. And he went on in that song and he said, I was finally the husband that most of the time I wasn't. I became a friend who you'd like to have. All of a sudden going fishing wasn't such an imposition. I went 3 times a year. I lost my dad. He said, I finally read the good book and I took a good long hard look at what I'd do if if I do it all again. And then he repeats the verse again and says what he would do, skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, all of those things. And then reiterates that he hopes that you get the chance to live like you're dying, like tomorrow was a gift and you've got eternity to think about it. So then he ends up with, what would you do with it? What could you do with it? Making what you've got left of life to work for you. And so I thought of those lyrics in that song this morning. And I thought about how applicable it was to this woman with the issue of blood. There's not much left in her at all. 12 years of a blood disease it wears anyone out. And so, you look at this story, and I'm sure there's many of us listening today or will watch the replay that will shake their head and agree, yeah, been there, felt like that, just absolutely drained, wore out, nothing much left. If you look at her medical history and what she would be like physically, I looked up what long-term blood loss, anemia, what it would create physically for an individual. And I was quite shocked to learn that she would have nerve damage, headaches, migraines that would never quit. She would have an elevated heart rate. Her skin color would take on a very pale, thin color. She would feel cold constantly. Her breathing rate, her breathing would increase. She would have mental and cognitive impairments and confusion. She would have high levels of anxiety, water retention issues, kidney problems, blood flow being rerouted to major organs. So she would have circulatory issues and problems of numbness and tingling and loss of feeling throughout her extremities. She'd be tired constantly. She would have shortness of breath. She would be dizzy. There would be chest pains and heart palpitations and problems, memory loss, slowed responses, motor skills that would be inhibited. That's the physical part of this woman's problem. 12 years of anemia, and it created this physically for her. But on top of that, if you understand the culture of the day, back then they didn't have specialists and x-rays and C scans and MRIs and lab technicians and all those things. So back then they were very careful and very plain when it came to dealing with unknown diseases. You were simply condemned to live out your life locked in to your home. We know what that feels like. We've gone through that last few years with quarantine. She lived quarantined for years. You think a year and a half, 2 years was long. She's had this for 12 years. And because of that, the laws of her town would make sure it would dictate that we don't know what's wrong with you, but we don't want it spreading. So you have one of two options. You either quarantine yourself for the whatever length of time it takes to get better, or you leave the city. You can see that evidence when Job was struck with his boils or whatever from head to toe. He had to leave his city, and he was sitting outside the city in the dunghill, in the garbage dump. That's what the scriptures in Job tell us. This woman is facing the same things. But everything she touches, everywhere she goes, anyone she touches, she's unclean. She makes those things unclean. She can't touch her family. You research this, you'll find out the laws of the land said that if she touched anyone, that individual would be unclean, and they would have to ceremonially go through purification for 7 days. And so again, boy, this sounds like something we've all just come through, isn't it? And so her husband couldn't have relationship with her. He would be unclean. He wouldn't be able to go to work. He wouldn't be able to go outside himself, according to Levitical law. And also according to the same Levitical law, he can divorce her. So I'm sure she's living with that in the back of her head, like, any day now he's going to leave me. She is a shut in, and she is shut out of every pleasant and every good thing that life could offer. It has been very difficult 12 years for this woman. This woman was in the worst shape after all of this time has elapsed. So you look at her physically, she is at the end of her rope. Spiritually, she is at the end of her rope. Emotionally, she's at the end of her rope. And she is ostracized. She is shut in without any regard to how she's doing any longer. There's nothing left to her. Just a frail, thin, anemic, pale individual that just getting out of bed every morning was a challenge for her. But what I love about this story is that in that state that she was in, she decided, if this is all I've got, then I'm going to make it work for me. She heard about Jesus. She never met him. She never knew much about him. All she knew is they called him healer. She tried everything else. If you research her story, you can see some of the crazy things that were existing for treatments for blood issues back then. Even to the point, there was one I read where it said they would crush up ostrich eggs and then straddle them, stand over them, whatever. And that was supposed to have some kind of curing anecdotal power. It was crazy, the things that she has tried. She's tried everything else. Why not try Jesus? Why not? Boy, that's the question of the day right there. You've tried everything else. Why not try this fella they named Jesus? You see, we give up and give in way too easily. We really do. We look at the suffering around us, and I'll tell you what, it has not been easy. We understand that. The last couple of years with this pandemic, it has been tough. You talk about being shut in. We've been all of us have been quarantined and shut in, and masks, and you know, you see how people have been treated and ostracized. I mean, it's happened. We have lived some of what this woman has lived. But we need faith that says, I'm going to live life anyway. We need a faith that says, I'm going to make this work for me. If this is all I've got left, then what I've got left is going to have to work. Because faith without works is a corpse. She knew she's on her last legs, so to speak, literally. If you have faith, then you've got to make it work. You know, she probably looked at it and thought, you know, this may be all that I can muster from these weary bones, but I'm going to work with what I've got. Jesus didn't have much to work with. You look, Lazarus was dead and buried. Jairus' daughter was dead. But he looked at Lazarus and called and said, Lazarus, come forth. You know why he named Lazarus? Why he said Lazarus? Because if Christ had just stood at the grave cave and said, come forth, every dead person in there would have come out. So he was specific when he said, Lazarus, come forth. When Jairus' daughter, Jairus, came to him, that's where Jesus was going in this story. When this woman came and touched the hem of his garment, Jesus was on his way to Jairus' house, because Jairus, his daughter, was sick unto death. And then this woman with the issue of blood interrupts Jesus on his journey to Jairus' house. But what I love about it is, you watch, what was Jairus there for? Jairus was there because his daughter was sick unto death. But when Jesus stops, he said, somebody touched me. Well, the disciples looked at him and said, you're in a crowd of people. Anyone could have touched you. There's hundreds of people jostling to get closer to you. He said, no, this is different because virtue has left me. So you can touch Jesus, or you can really touch Jesus. He knows what the difference is. And he turns around, and he knew exactly who it was that touched him, because he's Christ. But he said, who touched me? And then the woman, obviously on her knees, had touched the hem of his garment, and she admitted, it was me. And watch what Jesus says. Jesus says, daughter, be thou made whole. What's he doing? He knows Jairus' situation. And so the minute after Jesus says, daughter, be whole, be healed, people come to Jairus and they say, Jairus, forget it. Your daughter just died. It's too late. And Jairus could look at them and say, no, it isn't. I just heard him say, daughter, be whole. If he can make this daughter live, he can make my daughter live. And it was on that faith that Jesus let Jairus know, your daughter is going to be okay. You see, he knows what he's doing. God knows what he's up to. God knows how to help. God knows how to change situations around. And I know right now in this world and in many lives, it looks hopeless. But I'm telling you, hang in there. Work with what we've got. Have faith, because God does know what he's doing. You may say, well, he doesn't know what he's doing, because look at the state of the world. Look at the state of the economy. Look at the state of peace and versus war, and health versus pandemics, and all of these things, and the schisms and the wedges driven between classes of life now and families and all of it. I know that, but I know this. I still have to believe God knows what he's doing. I still do. But if you look at it, Jesus didn't have much to work with the cripple who couldn't walk, but the cripple walked. When he fed the thousands of people, all he had was a few loaves and a few fish, but he fed 10,000 people. He didn't have much to work with me, that's for sure. But he's still working on me, and he's still making it worthwhile. He's still working, folks. He really, truly is. He is. You see, a whip, a crown of thorns, naked, beaten, a cross, 3 rusty nails isn't much to work with, but it saved the world. It brought about redemption, and it made it so that we have a hope and glory. Say amen if you believe that. I'm not seeing too many comments. You can say I'm sick. You can say I'm tired. Or you can say I'm sick and tired. Overwhelmed, disenchanted, disconnected. You don't have zeal. Your hunger's abated. You're distracted by chaos. Your marriage could be falling apart. Finances gone. Friends and family, are walking away. Body aches, headaches, struggle between your flesh and your spirit. But I know right now, God is still working for us. He's still got the whole world in his hands. He does. I'm not belittling what's going on or anyone's pain. I'm trying to tell somebody today, life is still worth living. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't cave to the pressure and the fear. Don't dig a hole and jump in it and bury your head. It's still worth living. This woman, I'm sure it sounded pretty bad after 12 years, and it may feel like that. But I want to share another story with you real quick. If you look at the demoniac of Gadara, there's another story for you in the synopsis of the Gospels. And he has lived in the tombstones in the graveyard amongst the tombstones for a few years. And they've tried to put chains on him. They've tried to rope him and tie him and bind him. But every time they do, he breaks the chains. He's terrorized the neighborhood. And Jesus shows up one day. And I want you to see what happens here. That same man runs to Jesus and he falls at the feet of Jesus. And Jesus demands from him, he says, "What is your name?" And he's not addressing the man, the flesh of the man. He's addressing the demons in the man. And the demon said, "I am legion, for we are many." And if you understand Roman history, then you know a legion is approximately 5,000 people. It's a military group, platoon, 5,000 demons. So what that devil inside that demoniac of Gadara was saying is, we are many, we are strong, and there's 5,000 of us in here, and we're not afraid of you. But my question to you folks is this: if that was so big and so bad and so powerful and fearful and strong, how did the man get to the feet of Christ in the first place? Because obviously it wasn't the demons that ran to Christ, because they would understand that he has dominion over them. But yet that man with 5,000 devils inside of him ran to the feet of Jesus and was delivered by the power of Jesus Christ. You know why? Because he said, "I may have 5,000 reasons why I shouldn't be faithful, or why I shouldn't worship, or why I shouldn't run to Christ. I may have 5,000 reasons that are opposing me from doing right and living right and getting straightened up and cleaned up." But he said, "I'm not letting those reasons stop me." And I'm telling somebody today, don't let your excuses stop you from becoming all you can be. We are great at finding excuses, but don't let those things anchor you to your past. All your failures, you know what I'm talking about. You try to move forward, and all you can hear is the echo of your past failures. Oh, you failed at this, and this business venture failed, and that marriage failed, and that relationship fell through, and that man walked out on you, and that woman left you, and that father walked away, or that mother left you motherless, or you were convicted on this, and you served your 3-5 years, whatever, all of those things. And you know what I mean, because you step out of that and you try to move forward, and all you hear are the echoes of your past failures that try to anchor you to all of that other stuff. But that's when you have to stand up and say, "I am not using that as an excuse. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to get my faith right. I'm going to get myself right. I'm going to seek the Lord. I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got left." Yes, it may have been 12 years that you're sick with this, but that's not an excuse to give up on your faith. It isn't. Where flesh and hell give way to a soul that is on her last legs and needs a miracle, that's where Jesus and that woman collide. Where your last effort of despair collides with the brand new energy of newborn hope. That's what's happening. And if you look at the response of Jesus, he suddenly became aware of the touch, the timid, the stealthy touch of a broken-hearted and a broken-bodied, pale, wasted, diseased, riddled body of a little woman, but born through the crowd by the last effort of despair and the first energy of a newborn hope. She reaches to touch the hem of his garment. And I know keener intellects have criticized her errors, because the truth of it is she shouldn't have been there. The law stated if you are unclean, you cannot interact in the city. You cannot come out of your home. You're unclean. You can't be around where other people are at. And so I'm sure there are many that have frowned upon her and criticized her and pointed out her errors and her misconduct. But one fact remains: she is the only woman upon whom Jesus is recorded to have bestowed any epithet and name but a formal one. This woman is talked about all through scriptures. Her misery and her faith drew from his guarded lips the tender and mercy-filled lofty words of daughter. Everyone else was calling her, sickly, and everyone else was pointing out what you shouldn't be here. But there's one man that stood there with his hand outreached and said, daughter. And that's what you got to focus on sometimes, because people aren't always going to understand your motives. They're not always going to understand the way you do things. They're not always going to understand your opinions. People aren't always going to understand your faith. They're not always going to stand with you when it comes to your faith. But when everyone else is negative, that's where you've got to still be positive. And that has been tough in this world. I know there are days that I must admit that I've gotten negative, and I shouldn't have, and spoke negative things that I shouldn't have. But you have to pick yourself up from that negative place and begin to be positive again. You really do. You do. And so her case was so bad. She's the weakest in all the crowd, yet she presses through until she reaches Jesus. But the truth of it is, folks, there's always a crowd between Christ and the inquiring soul. There's always something between your faith and Jesus. Always. Oh, the enemy's good at that. People are good at that. There's always that crowd that's trying to separate you from sanity and strength. There's always that crowd that's trying to manipulate you and push you away from your promise. There's always those things that you try to, you want to make this day the greatest day. You made up your mind. You started it with a fresh cup of coffee and your outlook is great. And you've decided, I am going to smile and I'm going to be positive. And you go to work and the first thing you run up against is a negative Nelly. Well, there it all goes. There's always a crowd between you and better. Always a crowd of past sins, evil spirits. There's always a crowd of failures. There's always a crowd of mistakes. There's always the crowd of reminders of wrongdoings and shortcomings. There's always the crowds of accusations that seem to know everything about you. Ever feel like you just wish you could go somewhere and start over because too many people know your history, where you're at? Every time you've messed up, all the things that your family's done. Yes, David, Sandy. Every time, the doubting, it sets in. The times you stayed away from church just because your flesh didn't feel like going. Well, if I went to church every time I felt like going, I would have never gone. So many days. Just like right now, this morning, many of you have gotten up so early, 5:30, 6:30, 7 o'clock, just to be part of this live stream. And I appreciate that so much. Because yes, God is going to honor that. He is. And you say, but I'm so tired. And man, this is early. Yes, but if this word enriches your life, then you can live from this moment forward and go, that was so worth getting out of bed for. Not me, not my wife, but because you received something from God this morning. It was worth getting out of bed for. It was worth getting up. It was worth going through the process of wiping the sleepy dirt out of your eyes and washing your face and getting in the shower, or whatever your morning ritual may be. It was worth it because you're receiving something that you've first time ever you've heard hope for the situation you're going through. But those crowds keep telling you and tearing at you, and they're large and they're loud, telling you you have no right. It won't work. It never has. Why bother? You failed so many times. God's nothing left for you. He doesn't care. No one cares. No one loves you. No one even notices you. And yes, the voice of the crowd, it does echo. You do hear it. It has its effects. I'm sure as that woman in her anemic, weak state tried to make her way through that crowd to Jesus, oh, I'm sure she heard the seething, cutting comments of the people that wish she'd never showed up. But she keeps coming because she's got her eyes on something other than the crowd. See, you have to be deaf to the crowd sometimes. You have to die to the world sometimes almost. And I know with all of the turmoil in the world right now, I have to turn the news off some days because I just can't listen to it anymore. It bothers me so bad to see those innocent people being slain in a absolutely crazy war. It doesn't make sense. It bothers me to see, rights and freedoms of people taken away. It bothers me to see, people losing everything because they can't afford to fill their vehicle with fuel. It bothers me when people have no food anymore. It bothers me, those things. And so sometimes I have to just shut the crowd off. And I have to just pray and trust God and get a little word in my soul. Look at positive things, things that are pure and holy. Think on these things. But she's locked on to her last hope, and the crowd can't stop her. Now, there's a sermon in itself when the crowd can't stop you. When will we begin to discern the voice of the crowd from the voice of the Lord? When? When are we willing to stop listening to the voice of the naysayers and the negative? When are we willing to stop entertaining the thoughts that cut us down and cut others down in our view? You see, God didn't teach Gideon how to fight. If you go back in your scriptures, you can't find one place where God taught Gideon how to fight. But Gideon became the deliverer of Israel. You look at it. What a tremendous story. Defeated an army that was 100 times bigger than he was. Sounds like what's in the news going on today. God didn't teach Gideon how to fight. He changed what he was listening to. You see, Gideon heard how big and massive the army was. And so he cowered and he hid. And the Lord said, send an angel. And he said, come with me. You're going to go down to that camp and you're going to hear what the enemy's really saying. And they hid in the bushes off from the camp, the military camp of the attacking, I believe, is Amalekites, wherever they were. And Gideon began to hear them talk about how afraid they were of the children of the army of the Lord. So the Lord's not asking you to learn how to fight. He's asking you to change what you're listening to. Because if you're listening to the negative Nellies, and everyone says, don't be a Karen. If you're listening to all that trash talk, if you're listening to all that stuff, then you never will believe in your own ability or your own power. But God's not asking you to learn how to fight. He's asking you to change what you're listening to. And sometimes you need to hear a word like today. Turn off the negative voice. That's what you need to do sometimes. The end game of the enemy is to convince you and I to quit. Stay home. No one cares. They all think I'm unclean. 12 years. What's another year of sickness? She was unwanted. Oh, they magnified her sickness. There's people that invent pain, ghost pain it's called, just for medications. And she said, I've been to the doctor before. I've tried everything. I still feel horrible. There's no breakthrough for me. My destiny is to live in this sick state. Ever have anybody like that? Testimony time in the church, and you got 5 people standing up saying, God's great, boy, it's wonderful. No, not everything's right in their life, but they're believing. Then you get that one get up and say, oh, but my back is killing me today, and I don't know if I can make another mile. And oh, heaven help me. I don't know, Lord, take me now. Well, that was encouraging. It's like walking into the hospital and looking at the person in the bed going, oh, you're sick, are you? No, just didn't like my bed at home. Of course they're sick. That's why they're in the hospital. There's always those ones. But that's when you have to get up and you have to stop listening to that foolishness. But what if we fought through those crowds and those voices and those thoughts and made it our desire that we will get to the hem of the healer? She is the vilest of all, the most unfit to touch the Holy One, for her very touch will defile. Why try anything? Everything I touch fails, falls short. Others end up paying for my problems, feeling useless, incapable, calculated failures, negative, naive, never thinking anything other than her problems. That is the mindset of the bound, bombarded by the voice of can't, convicted by the jury of incapable, incarcerating you in the prison of spiritual poison. Every thought defeating every positive bit of potential, resulting in negative outbursts, a stay-at-home mentality, and chains that will slyly and secretly weave a web until you can't find your way out. Everything you say is negative. Everything you say is what won't work. Everything you say can't be. Why not say, I believe God will work for me today? Why not say that for a change? I believe it's going to be different. And yeah, you may have to still deal, with those negative Nellies. You may still need to deal with that junk at work. You may still need to deal with that stuff. But you can change your outlook. You can. Ever heard of the elephant chain syndrome? They say when you chain an elephant long enough, if you take a baby elephant and chain it to a stake in the ground, and that elephant grows, it will learn in time it can only go as far as the chain will let it. And then when that elephant becomes fully grown, because an elephant's memory is so long and it locks into so many things, it says that you can take the chain off of that elephant and it will still only go as far as the length of the chain allowed it. Because even though there's no longer a barrier to its progress, its memories are what's stopping it from going further. Perhaps that's what's happened in your life. Maybe you've been chained to something for so long, you just don't think you could ever be happy. You'll never find true love. You'll never have anything. You'll never be financially secure. Never find the job. Never recover. Never get healed. Never feel better. Never, ever, ever. And that is what life has trained you. Then you'll never go further until you take one more step. Because when they train the elephant that way, they say if that elephant ever figures out that he can take a step further than he's been before, it says that they'll never catch that elephant because it'll continue to run and run and run. See, where are the people that are determined to see change, that won't sit back and just accept defeat, that want to see something better? See, her coming is the worst time of all applications. It was unseasonable. It was in the midst of another case. Her coming was ill-timed. Excuse me. But Jesus doesn't refuse her. None other seems to have come so ill as her. But she's there. She's there. And she's going to touch the hem of his garment. For sure. For sure. You see, she only touched the hem of his garment. These are the words from a well-known Sankey gospel hymn. As to his side she stole, amid the crowd that gathered around him, and straightway she was made whole. The Bible's filled with people like this. A widow woman only had a little bit of oil, and she was going to make one last cake, and then she was going to die. There was another woman that had very little. She was out. The tax people were going to come and take her kids. But then the man of God showed up and said, go find you vessels, empty vessels. And she started rounding up empty vessels. And the more vessels that came, she took her a little bit of oil and kept pouring until all those vessels were full. And then she sold the oil and was able to pay her debts. 4 lepers were about to die. they had to first see that they were dying before they would ever change anything. But here's this woman, not much left. And she's made up her mind, I am going to make a difference somehow. She gets out of bed, struggles one more time, wonders, I'm sure, will this just be another anecdote that doesn't work, another attempt at finding another way to be healed? Is this going to be some crazy circus? But you know what? She tries. And that's what I'm saying to everyone today. You got to learn to live life. Take what you've got and make it the best you can. And it may not be much. Maybe it's just a little tiny bit of oil. Maybe it's just the last bit of strength. But if you'll take that, if you'll get in contact with the Lord, then he can make a difference in your life. He has mine. We live by faith here in our homestead. We do. We really do. Every day is a walk of faith. You know, we've gone through floods, and we've gone through storms and loss, injury. I went 2.5 years, almost 3 years before I could get a surgery to fix my shoulder. 5 tears from a motorcycle accident. Couldn't work. And then another year of after surgery of recovering and recuperating through physio where I still couldn't work. Nearly lost everything. But God put people on our path, and God made a way that every week and every month we've found a way to get it done. Gifts and people and everything that just kept coming and kept coming right when we needed it the most. Because God knew. And all we kept doing was just saying, God, you know. We kept one foot in front of the other, pushing our way through, accepting the fact that we can only change what we can change. We can only do what we can do. And the rest, he's going to have to. He'll open the doors. He'll feed us. He'll clothe us. He'll keep us. He'll heal us. He'll encourage us. Yes, he will. But you have got to get out of bed and make your mind up like this woman did. I'm going to live life today. Don't let old sourpuss, destroy your day. Work, it may be tough, but don't let it sour your mood to where you come home the same way. Yeah, you may struggle right now. How are we ever going to pay these bills? How are we ever going to find the money to get this done? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's easy. One of the hardest things in the world is financial struggle. And right now, especially here in Canada, I know you folks in the States are paying remarkably high fuel costs. But here in Canada right now, a gallon of gas is over $8. It costs me nearly $200 to fill my truck up. It's ridiculous. The cost of groceries is through the roof. Everything, inflation's going way up. You know what isn't changing? Minimum wage. So I understand life right now is filled with anxiety and fear and worry and wonder. How are we going to do this? But we're going to do it the same way that this anemic woman did it. We're going to get up and we're going to put our back into it. And if we have to crawl our way, then we'll crawl our way. But we're going to keep our faith, touch the Lord, and make it through. And he will touch us and supply all of our needs according to his riches in heaven. He really will. And on that note, Joni's going to come, sing a song, and I hope this has encouraged you today. I hope it has. I know I've enjoyed talking to you about this, and trust me, we have lived by faith our entire life. We have so many stories of faith. Oh, it's crazy what the Lord can do. But he is willing, and he'll do it. Yes, he will. He's always there for us. And so if you have any prayer requests, send them in through our email. Hey, honey badgers, how you guys doing? And everyone that's listening and watching, we're so glad that you are. So glad that you've joined us. And we appreciate each and every one of you. That's it, Tim. Thank you. Hit that like button if you would. And, grow the channel. Help us grow the channel. We're trying to, get it so that it'd be great to see first 100. But I realize it's a different genre of stuff here on this channel. We get it. Hey, Chelsea, how are you? It's our daughter, Chelsea. She's in here. She's not feeling well today. We'll pray that she gets feeling better. So here's Joni, and she's going to sing today.
Oh, the woman, she needed healing of her dreaded disease. Her money bought physicians, but only Jesus could bring relief. And though her last thread of hope, it was worn down to a strand, her heart held on to faith till she could touch him with her hand. And when you're hanging by a thread, still you can climb life's mountain. Though the cliffs are rough and jagged, you can hold. But if you should slip and reach ropes end, you're gonna find the hem of his garment. So don't let go of that last thread of hope. And if you're that hand that's hanging on to a frayed and a fragile thing, and are you clinging to the rocks above the canyon of dismay? Oh, just reach out for the lifeline. Oh, it will never break in two. Hold fast and don't lose heart, for once again, gotta pull you through. And when you're hanging by a thread, oh, you can climb life's mountain. Though the cliffs may be rough and jagged, still you can hold. But if you should slip and reach rope's end, you're gonna find the hem of his garment. So don't let go of the last thread of hope. Don't let go of that last thread of hope.
So hang in there, everybody. Have a great week. Thank you for being with us today at Creekside Chronicles. And share it with your friends. If you know somebody's going through a hard time, and share this with them. I hope it would encourage them. And I hope that through the week, if you're finding yourself struggling, you remember this story and realize that you can do it. You really can. It doesn't seem to say it's going to be easy, simple, or even enjoyable sometimes. It just means that you can,
Right.
with the help of the Lord. Take care, everyone. God bless you. Thank you, Jesse, Lisa, for always being there, moderating, always with us, and putting up the amplified parts of this,
Yes.
so that everyone knows where we're going. So y'all take care. God bless you, and enjoy your week, everybody. And we'll see you right back here, Creekside Chronicles next Sunday, but Creekside Maples Tuesday night, 8 o'clock for our live stream. It's always fun.
Lots of laughs.
Lots of laughs. Take care, everyone. God bless.
Bye-bye, everyone.
See you later. Bye-bye.